Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kircha. Coming up in today's newscast, President Trump sees a surge in Israeli popularity.
A new Israeli invention is completely changing the future of war.
And later, we'll reveal the newest desert hotspot that everyone's going to want to see in Israel. Now, here's the question of the day. How popular is United States President Donald Trump here in Israel? Well, that answer could impact Israel's ultimate involvement in a war in Iraq. Is Israel entering the fray against Iran? Because it looks as if the Jewish state is inching very close, as U.S. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu discuss critical bilateral and regional issues following the Iranian attacks against U.S. bases in Iraq and the U.S. killing of IRGC commander Qasem Soleimani. And while no further details of the conversation have come out, Israeli leaders have also already signaled their support for America's actions.
קאסם סולימאני הביא למותם של אזרחים אמריקנים רבים וחפים מפשע רבים נוספים במהלך עשרות השנים האחרונות וגם בימים אלה. ואני רוצה להבהיר שוב שישראל עומדת לחלוטין לצידה של ארצות הברית למאבקה הצודק לביטחון, לשלום ולהגנה עצמית.
That being said, we are talking of potential war. So what does the average Israeli think? Well, while the United States and much of the rest of the world is harshly divided, most Israelis really do agree with Trump's recent action. A new Pew survey shows that 71% of Israelis view President Trump favorably. Whether that translates into military action, though, is what remains to be seen. Israel has warned Iran not to involve the Jewish state in its quest to avenge Soleimani. And the Security Cabinet seems to believe that the best course of action is to stay out as much as possible.
In other news, Prime Minister Netanyahu is now vowing to expand Israeli settlements over the Green Line, no matter what the International Criminal Court says. And United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is standing by Netanyahu's side with yet another historical message.
United States Secretary of State Pompeo made history when he announced in a dramatic message that the White House no longer views Israeli settlements as illegal per se. And he reiterates these views in a video sent to a recently held conference regarding this change, while Israelis are celebrating the news.
מעולם לא איבדנו את זכותנו לחיות ביהודה ושומרון. הדבר היחיד שאיבדנו באופן זמני הוא את היכולת לממש זכות זו הלכה למעשה אחרי 1948, בין מלחמת העצמאות למלחמת ששת הימים. וכשחזרנו לשם, לא חזרנו לארץ זרה שגזלנו אותה מבעלי הקודמים, זהו עיוות מוחלט של האמת ההיסטורית.
But for the most part, the rest of the world still disagrees. And now Israelis in Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, are at risk with the International Criminal Court. The ICC now agrees that there is reason enough to investigate Israelis living in the West Bank for war crimes, just for moving into the area. And although Israel is not a signatory to the ICC, the Jewish state is still fighting back against the ruling. So now, with the support of the U.S. and speaking to the pro-settlement Kohelet Policy Forum Conference, Netanyahu reiterates his reasons why he'll never give up on the territory.
יהודה ושומרון הם לא רק המסד של תודעת הזכות היהודית במולדת, הם גם קיר המגן של מדינת ישראל. אם אנחנו לא נימצא שם, קנאי האסלאם יהיו שם. עם שליטה ישירה על כביש 6, על נתב"ג, על גוש דן, על כל מקום.
Netanyahu also vows that Jerusalem will never be divided and that in any potential peace deal, Israel will never abandon the settlements. Somewhat walking back previous comments, though, the Israeli premier did not mention annexation of the Jordan Valley or rule out the creation of a Palestinian state in the West Bank.
Now, a unique program is aiming to combat anti-Israel sentiment abroad in a very unusual way. Joining us with the details is David Hermelin, the president of the International Center for Public Diplomacy in Israel, and Vira Gulyas, a branding and media consultant and participant in this Hasbara program. So, my first question is actually for you, David. What is a secret Hasbara agent?
Actually, in the Center for Public Diplomacy, which I chair, we do two main things. First, we qualify Israelis from different disciplines, how to improve their skills in the fields of public diplomacy, so-called hasbara. But when we say hasbara, it's not that we explain ourselves apologetically, but we explain to colleagues from around the world how we see the situation in Israel and in the Middle East from our subjective, patriotic Israeli attitude.
So who are these secret agents within that then?
We teach Israelis facts and way to how it's better to transfer messages to different publics around the world. And then we integrate them in international events, not as delegation, but as individuals. And when the participants, the other participants from around the world, when they ask them questions about Israel and the Middle East, then they can express themselves.
So Virag, you know, I know that you're from Hungary originally. So how did you kind of get involved with anti-Semitism and hasbara?
Well, it's a whole balagan. Exactly, it's a balagan. That's the first Hebrew word I learned. I'm from Hungary originally. I live in New York for 3 years now. It all started with an Israeli guy. I cannot lie about that, but it didn't stop there, okay? So I've been back to Israel 17 times, and I don't know. I was coming from a very anti-Semitic background, not because of Hungary, I want to say that. It was just in society. And I talk in my lectures a lot about the different types of anti-Semitism. So mine was coming from ignorance. I didn't know better. I just knew the Jewish jokes and the Jewish stereotypes, but it was not really hate-driven, just ignorance. Okay, so that's how it started. And I came to Israel for the first time, and that changed something in as much that actually I just graduated in a master program in Jewish studies in Tudor College in Manhattan.
Congratulations.
So I really went far with this.
So what was the point when you realized that you want to help change the discourse about Israel?
The more I came here, the more it became like such a weird atmosphere around Israel. Like, why Israel is always singled out? I worked at the EU, and then I worked at the UN as a consultant, and I was like, what's going on with this Israel obsession?
So you noticed that there was
Absolutely.
And why do you think, now having worked in these organizations, why do you think that that's the case?
You know, it's smarter people than I am cannot really answer it why. But I really think that what I see is the enormous ignorance, and in US, for example, that the victimhood mentality is on the other side right now. So people like to belong. It's a psychology. Just like I always give an example in school, when you are the only non-smoker, you are outcast. So it's so much easier to march with BDS now than be a proud Jew or a proud Zionist. And that's sad.
But it's interesting because you say that you had this upbringing where you were surrounded by anti-Semitic jokes and comments. So could this have something to do with anti-Semitism that just inherently exists within these institutions?
Yes, but if you see Europe, there is a huge divide between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. What I always say, anti-Semitism is not something we can just kill. It's always gonna be there because it's going to be there. But in Eastern Europe, it is coming in verbatim, you know, so like a comment, whereas in Western Europe, Jews are being stabbed. So there is different shades and different layers of anti-Semitism. On the one hand, you can change that with education. I really believe in that, because if I could change, everybody can change. You just need to ask yourself the questions. I started to ask, why did I dislike the Jews? Who told me to dislike the Jews? Is it really true? Is it not true? So you can dig deeper and ask.
So then, Davide, what do you think is the answer in terms of getting people like, you know, our good friend here to change their minds?
Besides sending Israelis to other countries, the most important thing is to bring opinionists and policymakers to come and visit Israel. This is why the International Center for Public Diplomacy invites regularly people from different disciplines, politicians, scholars, academics, students, political activists, officials, etc., and we invite them to experience Israel by professional study trip, and then they can see the reality as it is. And during their professional visit in Israel, they can see the Israeli spirit and ask questions about also the political situation, about our heritage and background. And I invite our audience to Facebook us, or International Center for Public Diplomacy in Israel on Facebook or in Google, and we will be very happy to assist any professional group to visit and experience Israel.
This is an incredible program yet. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
And now the future of modern warfare is here, and thanks to Israeli technology, it includes just as many lasers as you were hoping for.
Speak softly, but carry a big stick. These are the words of President Roosevelt that have guided many world nations' diplomacy. But with Hezbollah to the north and Hamas to the south, Israel is swapping out the stick for something a little bit more high-tech. And it'll completely change the face of war as we know it. Now, lasers have long since captivated the imagination of futurists and sci-fi writers worldwide. But thanks to new Israeli technology 10 years in the making, high-energy laser beams capable of intercepting rockets and missiles are now making their debut in the field. Defense Minister Naftali Bennett says that the laser sword makes Israel's security apparatus more lethal, more powerful, and more advanced than ever before. Previous attempts to create such lasers have all apparently failed to produce good results, but this breakthrough defense combines multiple long-range lasers into one strong beam, and it can be focused on long-range targets while overcoming clouds, dust storms, and other disturbances. Finally, best of all, officials explained that while missile interceptors, like even the Iron Dome, can run out, this system is never ending as long as you have electricity.
All right, now speaking of security, there is a new position that has just been created in the Israeli army. And no, this time it doesn't have anything to do with defense. It's all about dancing.
Baseline.
The Israeli Justin Bieber. That's what Yonatan Mergi has been called ever since his debut on the Israeli singing competition A Star Is Born. Mergi is only 19, which means just like every other Israeli, he's been drafted into the Israeli army. Today, he's part of the Army Band, which is a singing unit that travels between army bases to perform for the soldiers. While some countries may be famous for their boy bands, Israel's Army Band has been internationally known for decades for its incredible singers. And now the army is drafting a new kind of performer, dancers, who will come and accompany stars like Mergi. Because why shouldn't the Israeli Bieber be able to give his full performance? So far, 2 dancers have already been drafted into the IDF, and 2 more will be entering next month. Their mission? To accompany Mergi as he wows Israel's bravest.
That's awesome.
I know.
You feel it. You start feeling it.
Yeah, and now that you've seen that, is that the unit that you would join if you could?
I'd still probably join Okits. I love dogs.
That's fair. That is completely fair. All right, now moving on. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is looking for some new employees. And now the world-famous Israeli mentalist Uri Geller says he's the man for the job. Nittany Manson has the story.
Spoon bending, mind reading, telekinesis. These are just some of the paranormal powers that Israeli mentalist Uri Geller claims he has. He says his mind has the ability to do things that are unheard of, like making coins fold.
Look, it's continuous bending for about 30 seconds.
Now, Uri Geller says he wants to use his skills to work for none other than British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. One of the UK's leader senior advisors, Don Cummings, recently took to the internet in search of, quote, assorted weirdos to come and work in their government, saying the civil service doesn't have enough cognitive diversity.
When I heard that Don was looking for extraordinary people with amazing talents, visionaries and weirdos, I said, well, maybe I'm a bit of a weirdo, I will apply.
Geller is convinced that he's the right man for the job. After all, he has a lot of experience.
I made the Russians sign the nuclear arms reduction treaty. The Americans asked me. The CIA verified and validated my powers. I know I can be great help to 10 Downing Street.
The 73-year-old illusionist gained notoriety back in the 1970s for demonstrating his so-called powers on international television. From describing hidden drawings, making watches stop or run faster, and allegedly communicating with super intelligent computers from outer space. His psychic abilities have been questioned by critics, but Geller maintains that he is the real deal. The mentalist is also a British citizen, and back in 2017, he even tried to use his powers to stop then-leader Theresa May from following through with Brexit.
Look into my eyes, everybody, and look deeply into my eyes. I'm sending you this power, the energy. I hope you're receiving it.
Are Are you receiving the energy? Are you feeling it?
I actually looked away from the screen because I was a little bit
was too
scared.
powerful.
It was a little bit
strong.
too powerful for me. But I'm a huge fan of Uli Geller, and I just love Mentalist. Remember when we interviewed Lior Suchard?
I do, yes.
He's kind of Israel's newest version of Geller, and
Inspired
I'm a fan.
very much by Geller, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, now, moving on. 20% of Israelis smoke cigarettes, despite the Israeli Health Ministry's attempts to expose just how bad they are for your health. Well, now a new Israeli study has just revealed yet another danger that comes with smoking. And you're going to want to hear this.
קודם כל זה מרגיע אותי, ולצערי אני גם מכור.
זה עושה לי פשוט פאן.
כי זה טעים, זה בטעם שוקולד.
קודם כל זה כיף. זה מרגיע אותי.
Relaxing. That's a word that's typically used by smokers to describe why they enjoy smoking so much. But are cigarettes really good for mental health? For decades, doctors have warned about the hazards of smoking, saying that cigarettes can cause lung cancer, heart disease, low birth weight, and high blood pressure. But now the Hebrew University claims that smoking is detrimental to mental health as well, and can make you depressed. Researchers have surveyed more than 2,000 students enrolled at Serbian universities, and their findings show that students who smoke have higher rates of clinical depression.
At University of Pristina, 14% of smokers had depression compared to only 4% of non-smokers.
Now, the researchers are calling on Israeli policymakers to take action by encouraging smokers to drop the habit and protect not just their bodies, but also their brains. You know, we're not even thinking about secondhand smoke, the impact on the environment.
Third-hand smoke, absolutely, yeah. It's a lot of danger out there from smoking. Keep that in mind when you buy a pack. But moving on, each week we've been showing you Emmanuel Kadosh's adventures in the four quarters of the old city of Jerusalem, and it's finally time to show you the last one. Take a look at the Armenian Quarter.
The old city of Jerusalem is divided into four quarters, and the smallest quarter is the Armenian one. This area is home to an ancient community of thousands of Armenians who have resided here for over 2,000 years.
So we're heading now to the Armenian Quarter, which you said that there's not too much for us that we're allowed to see, right?
Yes, it's a very small, the smallest quarter in Jerusalem. Armenians are kind of a different branch in Christianity. In the year 301, their king decided to force all his citizens to become Christian. It was the first country ever in the world that became Christian.
Located in the southern western corner of the Old City, the Armenian Quarter occupies about 14% of the Old City and is considered to be the oldest living diaspora community outside of the Armenian homeland.
This is the heart and the most important church that we have over here. A church that is dedicated to St. James. Over here, his head is buried inside. His body is buried in Spain.
The Armenians consider their quarter to actually be part of the Christian one. However, the main reasoning behind the separation of the two is distinct differences in language, culture, and practicing of religion. In the mid-20th century, Armenians began emigrating from the old city of Jerusalem. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War and the lack of long-standing political solutions have both been cited as the main causes of the decrease in the number of Armenians. Make sure you incorporate the four quarters of Jerusalem on your next visit to Israel.
We've got to go to Jerusalem.
We've got to go to Jerusalem again.
And escape the rain in Tel Aviv. The weather might be a little cooler in Jerusalem right now, but certainly nicer. Okay. Now, the 2010s has been labeled the decade of the chickpeas, or as we call them here in Israel,
hummus.
Hummus, yes. The healthy food has taken the world by storm, and here to tell us why is Deanna Linder, a food stylist and blogger. So, what makes hummus so popular?
Okay, well, I just want to say something. In America or in other places in the world, they might call it hummus. So we're talking about the same thing.
Of course.
It's basically a chickpea paste. And I'll tell you why. It fits all the criteria of all of the food trends that have been happening in the past 10 years.
Right.
So it fits gluten-free, it fits vegan, vegetarian, it's high in fiber, high in protein. So these are all the things that are like just on the top of the list of everybody trying to do, whether it's a trend or if it's here to stay.
Right.
It's a super, yeah,
But the way that we can...
I don't know if chickpeas are considered superfood.
It's not superfood.
But yeah.
But, well, here we like to think it's a superfood.
It's an Israeli superfood,
Yeah,
I
so
guess
let's
we can
talk
figure
about
it out.
some of the difference in terms of how Israelis consume hummus or hummus compared to the United States.
So, whereas in the United States and other places in the world, it's used as a dip, so it's kind of one of those things you have in an appetizer, used with chips or pita bread. In Israel, it is a main course.
Right.
It's the thing. Like, you're going to eat hummus, and that is your meal.
Which is a little jarring, actually. The first time you go to a hummus restaurant, you realize that this big bowl of hummus
It's
is
for
your meal.
only you to eat.
And it's warm. It's warm.
It's warm. And the cool thing is that in Israel, if you also want to stick with all of the food trends of being gluten-free, is in Israel, it's generally served with a raw onion.
Yeah.
So you can
scoop
just,
with the onion.
well, it's not, in Israel, it's actually called wiping, which is such an interesting thing because the way that you're supposed to eat hummus in Israel with a pita or with an onion is that you do this movement of wiping the hummus, and therefore in Israel it's really called, you don't go to eat hummus, you actually go to wipe hummus.
Yeah, that's true. And it's important to understand how much Israelis care about this and how angry they will get with you if you're eating hummus in the wrong way.
Exactly. And it's kind of one of those things where everybody has their favorite hummus, so you don't want to mess with an Israeli when they're saying this is, well,
I was going to say, I go to Abu Hassan.
I know a lot of people will say something else, so it kind of depends who you are and where you are.
What part of the country.
What part of the country.
So, but there are also some products that are, new products that are coming to light, that chickpeas in different forms, right? You have...
Right. I mean, I've seen it even in desserts these days.
Right.
So they're kind of just putting it in everything because it has... The chickpeas themselves have great quality. They're 8 grams of protein in one serving of hummus. They're full of fiber. They promote really good gut health. So it's kind of one of these, like, just really popular things that we can put in everywhere and say... Here you go, this is going to be super healthy for you.
This is for you from Israel.
Exactly.
Eat more hummus, maybe with a little less bread. That way it's still healthy.
Exactly. Remember we covered that a couple
And
months
hummus
ago?
milk. Oh yeah.
Hummus milk
It's a superfood.
All right. Yeah. All
right.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. All right. Now, one Israeli hotel has just received a major badge of honor, but get this, it hasn't even opened. This is where the sunset melds into the orange dunes, where the night sky is scattered with stardust, and where one of the top 20 hotels in the world is located according to CNN. It's called the Six Senses Shaharut, a stunning hotel and spa nestled into a dramatic cliff in Israel's famous Negev desert. And while the surroundings are serene and relaxing, the hotel offers a menu of desert-centric diversions, including camel safaris and rappelling into Israel's Machtesh Ramon, which is the largest wind erosion crater in the world. Here's the only catch. The hotel isn't open yet. Six Senses Shaharut will be opening its doors in the spring, offering 65 rooms to the public. Still, though, the hotel is already being listed as one of the 20 best new hotels to visit in 2020 by CNN and the UK Times newspaper. Just keep in mind, it costs about $1,000 a night at this southern Israeli gem. Luckily, breakfast is included.
Let's now take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be cloudy and rainy again with lows around 47 or 8 degrees Celsius. Then over the weekend, make sure to keep your eyes on the forecast and Israeli travel warnings because we're expecting a lot more clouds and rain with highs of about 58 or 14 degrees Celsius.
So now before we go, let's take a look at what is going viral in Israel, on tubing, of course.
Aww.
Oh no.
That's the cutest little helper ever.
So that is, I'm assuming that's in northern Israel, where
that's
Israelis don't know how to handle the snow that we've had in this past week.
That was a really good allegory, actually, for how Israel as a whole handles snow.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of my parents back in the day. When they used to, put me in these huge snowsuits when I was a toddler, then put spoons on the ground and force me to pick them up. And of course, I would just fall over. So
sounds mean.
Great parents. Great parenting. Thanks, Mom and Dad. All right. That is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.46 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube.
I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kirchak. Thanks so much for watching.